This message is brought to you by Apple Pay. Forget your wallet? It's all good because with Apple Pay, you can pay with a simple tap of your iPhone, the wallet you never forget, at millions of places worldwide, including websites, apps, and anywhere you see the contactless symbol. Security is built in with Face ID, so you don't have to worry about your cards getting lost or stolen. And the best part, you still earn the card rewards, points, and cash back you love. So say goodbye to the billfold, add your card to Apple Wallet, and start paying the Apple way. Terms apply.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello, and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, delivered from everywhere, it's Andy Greenwald!
I'm excited. It's spicy in here today.
Dude, today, no notes Thursday. I'm going straight Jay-Z from the dome in the booth. No notes. I just wanted to talk to you today about popular culture. We have a special guest on today. Your interview with Gail Simmons, one of the judges of Top Chef, a multi-time watch guest. I'm so excited to listen to that. Greenwald, a couple of housekeeping things. I've been remiss in mentioning these things.
Let's do it. Now you're going to do it just freestyling.
If you want to email us, it's thewatch@spotify.com. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's thewatchpod_ on Instagram. And if you want to watch us on YouTube, you can go to the Ringer-TV channel, subscribe there, watch us there with the Prestige TV pod, or you can watch us on Spotify, which is where I hope you're listening to this podcast. Today, we're going to talk, obviously, about Top Chef because we're talking to Gail, but also we're going to talk about the end of this third season of 100 Foot Wave, which is our beloved docuseries on HBO. We'll talk more about that. How are you? How are you, man?
I'm great. I'm excited that people are watching this on video because they can see now what I saw, which was you get into the housekeeping, and I just watched as you remembered that there's an underscore somewhere floating in our Instagram handle.
Always.
But you nailed it.
Yeah.
You did look to Kaya, but I think she was there for you.
I wonder who has the Watch podcast on Instagram.
I mean,
and would they sell?
It's probably some like Rolex king.
It's a watch account.
Kaya and I could predict that.
Do you that the problem with that is that those guys probably are liquid. Like they don't need money. They don't need DAP.
Unless John Hamm is paying some nocturnal visits to their special drawers. No, they're fine. So the one thing I wanted to update you on is, so on Monday, I introduced you, Kaya, and I think a wide swath of our
several
listeners
thousand people,
to my new alter ego, Dave, inspired by my beloved Dave Sushi in Bozeman, Montana. Chris, are you familiar with a internet euphemism known as milkshake duck?
Yes.
Okay, so for people who don't know, a milkshake duck refers to a very funny tweet in which someone was describing the cycle of love and discovery on the internet, where someone is
like, oh my God, this guy is
this duck is drinking a milkshake.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I regret to inform you the duck is racist.
Right.
So I think
turn that duck over, there's a swastika on its belly.
These days, so I was thrilled. I had a great time in Montana, as I mentioned. And then I think my dewy optimism about my new identity lasted about 3 hours after our pod posted when someone said, Dave killed a guy, right?
But he didn't murder
I want to be
someone.
clear. We are not libeling anyone. But it was pointed out to me that last year there was a health outbreak traced to Dave's where they served raw or undercooked wild morel mushrooms and a couple people died.
Number one, didn't know that was a side effect of raw uncooked mushrooms.
To be clear, I've done some research now, more research on this than I did on any TV show we're talking about today. These were mushrooms like from a renowned distributor in California. These mushrooms went everywhere, but everywhere else knew to cook them real good.
The crisis starts at home.
But I didn't know.
Blaming California, just like a classic big sky country.
If we could just liberate this state from its mushroom regulators, we would be in a much better place. So anyway, how have you been enjoying your wild mushrooms this season?
Well,
and
it's interesting to see you get into the cycle of apology and now redirecting.
You hate apology.
Well, no, because what's going to happen now is you're going to get a DM from like Dave's nephew who's like, that's my dad's brother. And
good catch.
That's my dad's. He's my dad. So that's how they do things in that family. No, you're going to get a DM from someone close to Dave who's like, this case is bullshit.
Listen,
you know what I mean? And the next thing you know, you're going to be like talking about Karen Reed like 2 hours into a podcast.
I want to be clear. You have been steadfast about this.
Yeah.
You and your political mentor, Andrew Cuomo, have a tradition of not apologizing for anything. And I think it's serving you both well this week. So let me just say that going forward. Second, I am still wearing my Dave Sushi hat with pride.
Okay.
I didn't order the mushrooms at a sushi restaurant. Okay. So
you're saying it's got to be some accountability on the part of the customer.
I just pick your spots. Literally pick your poison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I did think that was funny.
I have a couple of pop culture things to throw at you before we get into 100-Foot Wave. Biggest trailer that dropped this week. First of all, I just want to say, since the embargo has lifted, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow on The Big Picture. And I know that you probably are on the fence about 28 Years Later.
I don't think I'm on the fence, but go on.
Fear factor. Is it fear factor?
No, I mean, we don't need to get into this, but I love 28 Days Later. And I kind of forgot that I loved it. And it didn't even occur to me that would naturally be categorized as a film that professional-facing podcast Andy would never consider.
Sure.
So I'm having a real crisis of the soul here. I like that movie. I think I can handle this. 28
Years Later is one of the best movies of the year.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible. So I really encourage you to see it. I encourage all our listeners to go see it. It's been a strange rollout for this.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that's sort of the big release of this week, but the big trailer from this week was Bruce Springsteen.
No, it's just Springsteen.
Springsteen,
:
underline.
Oh, underline?
Yeah, it's like Springsteen, and then it got a little Ken Burns Civil War underline action. And then it's Deliver Me From Nowhere. This is the new Scott Cooper film coming out, I believe, early fall, starring Jeremy Allen White as Bruce Springsteen. And it is about the period of time where Bruce Springsteen, made Nebraska in order to sort of free himself of some demons and then make Born to Run, which became sort of these huge arena rock
and exploded further
up until Born in the USA, et cetera. This is now kind of number 35 in the musical biography jukebox movies sweepstakes that we're in. I happen to love A Complete Unknown. I don't believe you saw it as an act of solidarity with your Jewish brothers.
Well, full. You saw it in solidarity with your half Jewish brothers. Yeah. Like Chalamet, but yeah.
But you did not see A Complete Unknown?
No.
Okay.
I am not actually boycotting it. I know. Haven't watched it. You know what? There was a new Mike Birbiglia special last night, so I had to just, the heart wants what it wants. You know what I mean? I'll get to it.
I wish we could. I want to get back to the energy of you being like, God damn, you like TV. When I was like, yeah, I watched 3 episodes of this.
I was thinking about that because I was thinking about this, and we'll get to this when we talk about 100-Foot Wave. But I realized that what you are a professional at what you do, and really what I am is more of a soul surfer.
Sure. Yeah. We'll talk. That's a really good distinction.
That's the distinction between
us.
Chumbo
versus
Titus.
Yeah. You watched this trailer?
Yes.
Yeah. Vibes?
I almost have more questions for you than I have answers. One of the first things I should say is
let's just locate where Springsteen is for you.
Big.
Okay.
I mean, I too am a working man in America.
Who do you think's a bigger Springsteen fan? You or Haberman? Maggie Haberman?
Oh, I think Clyde Haberman, her legendary reporter dad, is probably the biggest fan. I think you are probably the bigger fan than I am. Maybe.
I think maybe.
Yeah. I think I love Springsteen, and I'm excited about him this week because of this Tracks 2 thing, which I'm real hype about. But I should say, and I don't know if you feel this, as someone who recently saw Pavements, the Alex Ross Perry film, that among the 17 things that it does, pretty effectively skewers the Oscar music biopic industrial complex. That was first and foremost in my mind when I saw this trailer. Okay, first thing when we talk about this movie trailer, he doesn't look like him. He doesn't really look like him.
Do you think Chalamet looked like Bob Dylan?
More than Jeremy Allen White looks like Springsteen. Now, I want to ask you, I'm not saying this as a declarative statement, though I just did declare it. Is this in any way a deal breaker for you? When he appears on screen, I love Jeremy Allen White as an actor. I think he's incredibly talented. When I see his face, I'm like, hey, cool, Jeremy Allen White.
Okay, so there's this thing that happens where an actor decides they're going to play a real person, and they either have to do it gesturally, like they have to be like, I'm capturing like an essence.
The spirit of them,
and in a scene-to-scene basis, you're like believing that I am this person.
This is true with impersonators,
but that might not mean I always nail the accent, or I have the exact same hair, I'm the exact same height. I think on the other side, then, there's like Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, where he's like, I actually figured out how Lincoln talked.
You have to refer to me as Mr. President.
And you have to refer to me as Mr. President. But like, if you look at a picture of Lincoln and a picture of Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, they don't look like the same. You know what I mean?
Photography is much better now.
But it's always Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, I don't, so I think that no matter how deep you go into mimicking or looking like somebody, there is still going to be that line that you don't cross. And I think Jeremy Allen White does a convincing job of being a guy sitting in a Dodge Charger, or he does some pretty good guitar moves in this.
When he's doing Born to Run on stage at the end of the trailer,
it looks exactly like Bruce Springsteen's
that was really good.
Moves. Yes.
I think that the other thing that I'm potentially bumping on, and again, I want to be very clear. I think it's interesting more than it's like, a dooming, like, I'm not making a Barbie proclamation here about the trailer. This is marketing. This is not necessarily the movie. It feels like from the trailer that what Scott Cooper wanted to make, and maybe did make ultimately, is a more narrowly focused portrait of an artist in transition. Right? Like an artist at a very specific period of time making what felt like and probably was a radical choice for his career. The trailer tries to strike, I think, a kind of an uneasy balance between that vibe and big ticket stadium stuff, both literally in terms of ending with him with the E Street Band, which wasn't really the experience of making Nebraska.
Sure.
Because obviously a part of his life.
They show a little bit of that when he's with Paul Walter Hauser in the hotel room. And
they show it, but I'm saying they also are like, don't worry, it's still the Springsteen that is like famous in the popular imagination. But the other part of it that felt really geared towards the cheap seats is putting the name Springsteen in the title, because I think they were real worried about tracking.
You guys don't know.
Because wait, it's Deliver Me From Nowhere, right?
Nowhere, yeah.
Right. And then the second thing was like all the voiceover of like, I got a big hole in myself, and now I will use the music and art of my spirit to fill the holes in America.
You're leaving something crucial out there that we have to talk about.
Stephen Graham?
No.
Okay.
The voice of the trailer.
Yeah.
Okay. Runaway star of the trailer.
The star of the trailer.
I mean,
do it. Say it.
It's a strong wind is blowing.
Put some respect on his name. Say it.
Jeremy Strong plays Bruce Springsteen's manager, John Landau, who I think didn't have an insignificant role in producing this film
and in crafting, at least in his view,
Springsteen mythos.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. I think Landau is involved in the movie, if I remember correctly.
I think Springsteen is like gave the movie his okay.
Yeah.
So
it's like, I could see this being like the teaser version where they're not going to show too much Bruce.
Yeah.
But man, they really make it seem like Jeremy Strong is like got a big role to play in this movie. And I'm kind of into it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of different ways to approach these artists, but a lot of the most iconic people like Dylan and like Springsteen, you're going to have a hard time taking them dead on, because I think people needed like a POV character, an entry, like some way to get into the story.
Yeah.
And having Landau make this insane metaphor about a hole in the floor, and when he's finished filling the hole inside of himself, he's going to fix America.
Oh boy.
It kind of did for like 6 months. Like
it did.
It worked for a little while.
It did. I think that my hesitation, this could be an amazing film, and I'm excited to consider it.
It'll be what it's going to be. I like the music, so I don't really care.
No,
you know what I mean? That's the thing. That's what I felt about A Complete Unknown.
I think that I'm still, and probably stubbornly, wishing that, like, you can't fund a movie about Bruce Springsteen. The idea of making a movie about a guy in a hotel room making Nebraska, like, maybe Fox Searchlight would have made that movie in 1998, but like nobody's making that now, and they're not releasing it in movie theaters now. It has to be an arena tour of a movie, right? It has to play the hits, like a legacy act, and that, at least in my prediction, or at least an experience with other movies, the more you widen that net, the more you lessen the impact and specificity of the art. But this is a moment when the idea of Springsteen as a curated mythos is very much in play. So it's next week, I think, Tracks 2 is coming out. And
I think it's this week, man.
My Spotify countdown, where do I look for Daniel Ek to see it? I think it says 8 days.
Okay.
So 20 years ago, he released Tracks, or longer now. Yeah. And it was like lost songs that had never made it onto an album.
Yeah, that had loose ends on it.
People got really excited about that, as they should have. Tracks 2 is 7.
The song Loose End, not loose ends, like loose songs. Like the song Loose End is like the best Bruce Springsteen song.
Really? That's We should do dueling top 10s for ourselves and the other fans who look like us, like podcast fans. So this is 7 albums that he fully wrote and recorded and then decided not to release. This is so fascinating to me. Like, mainly because he was thinking about the larger public-facing narrative of his career. So there's a record that he made after Nebraska that was Nebraska-esque, and he was waffling between releasing it or Born in the USA, and he released Born in the USA. There's an album on there that is the rest of the songs recorded when he recorded Streets of Philadelphia. That's like this legendary loops album.
Oh, yes, like the synth album.
Synths and beats and things, and apparently it's phenomenal.
Bruce Springsteen lo-fi study beats.
He sounds a little bit like Primitive Radio Gods, you know? Like he invented that too. But he decided he had done a bunch of relationship records in a row and didn't want to release it then.
Yeah.
Because of and also what he wanted to, and he got back together with the E Street Band. I find that so interesting.
Yeah. Can you imagine being so prolific that you're just like, I have 7 podcasts that I just didn't put out this week because they didn't fit the arc of my week?
I assume that's what you do. I don't know what you're talking about. You were like, I'm going to be 5 minutes late because I'm doing a quick hit on another pod. Like, don't be modest. But so few musical artists are able to show run, for lack of a better term, their own career while they're in the day-to-day work of managing their lives and jobs.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting and it's not underexplored, but I think it is a unique element of him, whether it was Landau crafting it early on or Bruce himself
how self-conscious
understanding.
this film will be of that kind of, because I can't believe we're talking about this movie for like 20 minutes, but
we've opened something here without your laptop.
I think that there's obviously an element of where they're going to try and take, like, yes, this was in some ways premeditated and in some ways crafted, but it was crafted from the heart, which is actually what I would say about Springsteen. It's like there's a theatricality, but it's a sincere theatricality.
Well, that's true about Dylan too. That
Sure.
and it was important for his brand, both of their brands and narratives, to be just like pure. That is their brand. Yeah. But nothing is completely pure. I mean, there's always performance and theatricality to it. What is your number one unexpected? Like, what is your Springsteen number one that's not Nebraska? Do you know what I mean? Like, you take
Album?
away. Yeah. Like, what's your favorite record?
I like Darkness. I like The River too, but I like Darkness.
I've always figured you as a River guy.
The River sounded like shit for a long time unless you had it on vinyl. The double CD
the
of
double
the
CD
River
and the brick
was kind of thin.
Yeah.
But it sounds good on vinyl, and then and then they remastered it, and they have so many bonus tracks. So The River is a late breaker, but I think Darkness at the Edge of Town is my kind of like go-to.
Do you want to just guess mine? You probably know.
Is it Tunnel of Love?
Fuck yeah, of course you know me so well. Tunnel of Love, baby. That is a masterpiece. To be clear, for people watching at home, he's not laughing because it's a bad record. He's laughing because he knows me so well.
Yeah, I'm just laughing because it's like, of course, your fucking favorite Bruce Springsteen record is Tunnel of Love.
I said outside of the hits.
I need to get something off my chest here to change the subject. I am a huge industrial strength consumer of pop culture, internet news, and content. So like, I say this by being first and foremost saying I am the problem.
Yeah.
I love sending texts that are thinly sourced, triple, like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th hand reporting of something someone casually mentioned that somehow suggests here is the next 5 years of Hollywood.
You have earned the nickname the Prince of Pajiba.
The region of Reddit. Yeah. So I get it. And I am part of it. I just want to say this. This week, news, quote unquote, broke, quote unquote, because Holt McCallany, who is one of the great character actors of this century, and
recently seen in Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning,
and is in a upcoming Netflix series called Waterfront.
Cool.
Which sounds like Yellowstone, but in North Carolina a little bit.
Okay.
I love Holt McCallany, and one of my favorite performances by him is in the TV series Mindhunter.
Yep.
In his press duties for promoting this other Netflix show, Waterfront, he was asked about the possibility of Mindhunter coming back for season 3, and he said, I am sure truthfully, you know what? I actually had a meeting with David Fincher about it, and he said that maybe it would come back for 3 2-hour movies.
Cool. Yeah.
And now that has become Mindhunter season 3 will actually be 3 2-hour movies, says Mindhunter star. And I understand that in some ways it's wishful thinking. And another way, it's really good to keep the name of the show in the mix.
Right.
And you throw these stories out there, and if there's a huge reaction to it, you can go to Netflix and say, see, there's this huge audience for our wildly expensive detective series.
Yep.
Et cetera, et cetera. I get it. But like, this is kind of, you know how like Windhorse gets really mad about aggregating? Like, hey, aggregators, don't aggregate this. We need to chill out because I think people are going to get like over their skis too much about like, oh my God, I heard Steve McQueen's directing Bond. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, maybe, but like we can't now pretend like that's a given. Just the same way this Mindhunter news is not news. Two dudes had a meeting.
Are you suggesting, and I want to be careful when I say this, I've already been libelous once in this podcast. Are you suggesting that we can't trust what we read on the internet?
Well, look, maybe I still feel burned by the fact that I thought that Christopher Nolan's Odyssey was in fact going to be a remake of the 1980s helicopter action film Blue Thunder.
You also thought that Reed Richards would be making his MCU debut in episode 3 of WandaVision. So, you know, the list is long of shattered dreams. The problem with you is
I was watching House
easily.
of R the other day, and Mal and Joe were talking about their baby, not Mal and Joe's baby, the Franklin Richards.
Franklin Richards, Reed and
son.
Susan's.
He's like the baby is in the trailer.
What did you just do to
He's
the baby?
in the trailer. He's like their.
This is how you hold a baby? Wait, we need Kaya in on this. Like, Chris, you are famously a wonderful friend and uncle to everyone's children. Have they let you hold the children?
No, I don't mean like this. You hold it. Like
Amanda Knox is real cute.
Kal-El. Yeah, like,
you fucking Simba everyone you see.
But the baby is in the trailer.
Right.
Franklin Richards. They're like, this changes everything. You know.
Oh.
And so
okay.
I don't even know how I got off on this.
Can you name their other child? Canonically? Their second child?
It's not Nathan, because Nathan is Scott.
Yeah, I just like it when you admit that you know something dorky. No, it's Valeria.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Is she named after someone?
Valerian Steele. No, I don't know.
Why did I get off on this?
Because you were saying you can't believe and trust
I have
things.
been hoodwinked before.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of reasons for this. One is that our entire lives are a disinfo campaign now, and that's just the way things are. Two, fans, particularly fans in like established fandoms, are not only so rabid for any information, there is a bit of a power imbalance where now there is like a demand and expectation to be fed constantly.
Yes.
I've had some brushes with this recently. I did see recently that like, you know, especially when there's just crumbs. So there was like some casting announcement saying that the Harry Potter show, of which I'm quite familiar, is like looking for like young, like a 2 to 4 year old performer or something for you to demonstrate incorrect safety procedure on when visiting the set with me next year or later this year. And so, but that was framed in some internet post as new HBO Harry Potter series to focus on young Harry.
Right.
Like they were going to be doing like the, oh God, what was the movie with Jodie Foster? Like the Little Gangsters
Little
movie?
Man Tate? No.
yes, not Little Man Tate. The 70s gangster movie where they're all kids.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember the name
God
of it.
damn it. Anyway, yeah. They're not doing that. Like sometimes things are just things.
You can confirm that? You're breaking news now?
Wow, I probably am going to lose my job for that. But luckily I can always get back to making sushi and foraging for wild mushrooms in my beloved
and catching
Montana.
Up with 100-foot wave.
Truly, I'll have more time now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think the other thing you said that's really important is that people have meetings all the time.
Yeah, I you know what? I think also Fincher is now getting into the like his development slate is as interesting almost as the movies he makes. So I hope this happens. I'm pretty excited by the idea of them picking up this story maybe a couple years later, or they could even do it as an anthology series of films that drop in on major cases or major developments in criminal profiling. I would be fascinated with more Mindhunter, but
I would too. I think that this is one of those tough ones where there is certainly an enormous amount of goodwill and desire to do more on the part of many people involved. There are also, I think, probably reasonable reasons, not just like Netflix hates good things, why it did not continue. Whether those are budgetary, schedule-wise, ratings and return on investment, like there were reasons. It wasn't just like you have done a bad job.
Sure,
here.
and their relationship with Fincher has continued. So obviously,
Yeah.
they're making they're making a they spent $20 million reportedly on the script for the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel that Fincher is directing.
Fincher, like,
Did you see the cast for this movie so far?
no, it's been
It's
no.
Brad Pitt, Elizabeth Debicki,
Yeah,
Yahya Abdul-Mateen,
yeah.
and Carlo Gugino.
That's a lot of the watch favorites.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fincher, you're more attuned to this than I am, but I feel like Fincher's rep has just whipsawed a lot recently. Because remember, there was a lot of talk like over the last few years. The thing about David is that he's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
He's such a funny guy.
He is a funny guy.
And then there are people like my friend Kim Dickens, who's just like working with him is like the greatest experience I've ever had being an actor on film. And then I'm reminded that like
Jake Gyllenhaal had to piss in jars.
yes, or Mark Maron's like the only interview I've never released is my interview with David Fincher because he wanted creative control over it. So
That's really funny.
He's probably pretty chill until Netflix is like, okay, here's what we want for season 3.
Right.
And then he's like, I have notes.
Let's talk about 100-Foot Wave before we get to our Gail Simmons interview,
Mhm.
your Gail Simmons interview.
Are you disavowing it?
No, I'm not disavowing it at all. I just I'm not able to participate in this interview. But I want to talk about season 3 of 100-Foot Wave. So for people who don't know what Andy and I are talking about, this is a relatively long-running at this point docuseries on HBO about a group of big wave surfers
Mhm.
who every winter season, which is essentially like December, November to March, I think, go to the western coast of Portugal and surf a wave off of a town called Nazaré. It's like these huge waves that crash against these giant cliffs. They've discovered that you can get upwards of 100-foot waves.
Potentially.
The measuring system for waves is fluid, I think.
Much like the waves themselves.
And on one hand, it's like this incredible marriage of visuals. Obviously, this is honestly the greatest testament to like modern camera technology that I think I've ever seen.
And it's amazing what you take for granted on the
Where,
3 seasons
you
in.
watch surfing stuff from the 60s or even the 80s or the 90s, and it's like pretty cool. And now they're like flying drone GoPros into barrels and, diving off of things with people. It's just really mind-blowing photography. Chris Smith directed the series, and it's a marriage of visuals with sound because all of the music is pulled from Philip Glass's original composition library. So they match these incredible images with this sort of very elemental, beautiful neoclassical stuff.
So it's not so Phil Glass isn't crushing tape.
I read an
Cortez
interview with
Bank.
Chris Smith, and he was like, "It's a misnomer that Philip Glass is just like grinding out tunes for this. He's
quite elderly now.
library. Yes. So season 3 just aired. It was 5 episodes. The previous 2 were 6 each. It largely focuses on a man named Garrett McNamara, who's sort of the father of the modern big wave surfing movement / the sort of mayor of Nazaré. He's not elected mayor, but runs the kind of like surfing community there.
He is credited with discovering and sort of popularizing that wave as a destination.
Yeah. This has been like a passion project for me and Andy for like the last couple of years. We've, I think, found this during COVID.
Yeah, during COVID, the first season, which I think it's safe to say was not intended to have, it was not made with the thought of future seasons in mind, possibly, or at least the beginning of it. The first season is about Garrett and the discovery of the quest for and the sort of popularity of Nazaré.
Yeah.
And the relationship between one flawed man and like his maybe pyrrhic quest to do something impossible.
Yes.
And the first season on its own is a really remarkable documentary. Like you said, during COVID, it's so beautiful.
Transporting.
And so transporting and hypnotic that it was one of our favorite shows of the year. And one of the more remarkable things about the series, and credit to Chris Smith and the whole team behind it, is that they found really, I think, legitimate reasons to continue the story and ways to continue the story. I would say seasons 2 and 3 are quite different from season 1, but particularly I found season 3 very moving in its own way.
I felt like the surfing footage, and there's an episode in particular that I think features some of the most extraordinary stuff I've seen in the whole show and been honestly like in my life. But it's like a character study. It's about a bunch of people because it's as the seasons and episodes go on, like they've expanded the aperture to widen the aperture to like include about half a dozen recurring
they're
characters. And so like a lot of the show is now about like how these people feel at a crossroads in their life. Like they've kind of surfed for a while. They're all having families or growing their families. They're moving around a lot. The sort of life of the big wave surfer or even the professional surfer seems like pretty itinerant. Like you're always kind of running to this swell or that swell. And as character studies, I thought it was actually like the season in particular was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Really extraordinary stuff.
I was really, really affected by this season. And I think it was, I'll call up the IMDb page while we're talking in a moment, but I'm so jealous that you don't have your computer open. I don't want to open mine either. Like many documentaries, 100-Foot Wave credits a writer. And I thought that the crafting of this season was really, really well done. So the bulk of it is taken from, I think, 2022, 2023 seasons.
Yeah.
Seasons, like you said, of transition. And it found a way to track the increasing costs of Garrett's obsession on his family, and his family are enormous, and on his body, with the journeys of these younger, to varying degrees, younger surfers who are at different spots in their journey, and maybe in the end not quite as maniacally obsessed as Garrett, and maybe that's a healthy thing. Particularly building up to the last episode, which is really about the choices that all of them make for family and built around Christmas and the holidays for one particular year. But the other thing that it did that makes me feel like this really is a show or a vehicle that could continue was it expanded past Nazare. Yeah. And it was like, well, there are some other crazy waves in the world. And so, like you said, the first 2 episodes of the season are very much about Garrett. Is he going to return to Nazare? Can he do this anymore? The toll of his body, concussions, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the 3rd episode, suddenly we're introduced to this concept of surfing a colossal wave that exists only 110 miles off the coast of California in the Pacific Ocean over some like submerged mini continent called Cortez Bank. And we're introduced to a new guy who just looks like, super...
is that like, Billy? Is that his name?
His name's like, his Billy. It's like Hawaiian Tropic Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
And he's just like, yes, I have been waiting 20 years for a storm to form again so I could organize a boat trip so that we could all go surfing
so one of my
hundreds of
favorite
miles
things
from
about
land.
this season is getting introduced to guys that when they first show up on screen, you're like, you respectfully, and honestly, I'm jealous, look like a little bit of a burnout.
Yeah.
And then the next shot is them organizing like
and executing
a massive like military convoy to get a bunch of jet skis and surfers out into the middle of the Pacific.
Or into Morocco overnight and all this shit. I also should say that there is a really, really great and I think under-celebrated pleasure in life of watching something that I am, and I think to a degree we are completely ignorant about. Because when I'm watching the show, and there are probably people listening or people who watch 100-Foot Wave who have even a passing understanding of contemporary surf culture.
Sure.
Shocking, I don't.
Yeah.
Again, I'm more of an inland guy, like Big Sky Country.
Like West Covina.
Basically. So what's kind of awesome about the show is like the beginning of episode 4, they could be, or any episode, they could be like, Homer Waikiki was the sole surfer of legend.
Yeah.
Every year, the greatest people on earth gather to honor his legacy. He was a policeman. He was a theater actor. He was a father. He was a proctologist. And no one surfed better than he did until he was abducted by aliens. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to start downloading JPEGs of the posters of this event from the last 45 years.
Eddie?
Yeah, so there's the Eddie, what's his name? Eddie Aikawa?
I think it's Eddie Akai, isn't it?
He is a legend that I have never heard of, who has the craziest backstory and like his life and what happened to him. And the biggest big wave surf competition, the most prestigious surf competition, which had not ever once been mentioned in 3 seasons of the show, happens this year. Because, by the way, prestigious surf competitions sometimes don't happen.
Yeah, because they need the swells, bro.
So there have been decades when this event hasn't happened. But the excitement of being like, oh, I guess this is something hugely important that I've never heard of is part of the fun of watching the show.
So the other, I guess, fun part of watching the show is the central family that
we got to talk about the
wrapped around. So when this was pitched to Chris Smith, I was reading an interview with Smith and AV Club. I guess this came to him through his producer Joe Lewis, who was like, hey, I've met these people. They're really interesting. Just do a Zoom with them. And so he did a Zoom with Garrett and Nicole McNamara, Garrett's wife. And I don't know, I can't remember how it lines up with F1 Drive to Survive, but the idea that basically people are interested in not only like the sport, but the sort of drama behind the sport. I have no idea if that was part of the premise for this show, but it certainly handles the interpersonal drama of this show in a really, really thoughtful and I think thought-provoking way. It's not gossipy. It's just like what happens on the waves actually impacts what happens off the waves, you know, and vice versa. Garrett and Nicole start out and, you know, have this kind of, I guess, idyllic relationship where he's this big wave surfer and she's like the mother of his children, and they live in Hawaii and they travel all over the world with their kids, and it just seems so fun and cool. And her family, like her brother CJ is involved. And
he's like the sweetest man alive, and he also surfs, and she's also Garrett's manager, and it's all connected.
It seems like a very communal kind of like traveling circus.
And they're like the mama and papa bear of Nazaré. When all these younger surfers come gathering, like they help them, they acclimate them, they're kind to them, they show them the ropes.
And I think as Garrett has gotten older and as his body has taken more and more lumps, but he insists still on being a major part of like big wave surfing, it's kind of put a little bit of a strain on their relationship, at least to the extent that we can see it on screen. And I got to say, I would love to know, but I guess also it's just really interesting to think about. They brought this documentary idea into the world by being like, we're ready to share our life. And now 4 years later, or whatever it is since the first season.
5 years, I think.
5 years. You know, like they're living in northern Italy on a commune essentially, and go like because they wanted to take their kids and put them in a
Steiner mountain school.
I looked up a little bit about Montaldo, Italy. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, as a place, I don't know if I want to go to the forest school.
One of the things about this show that I think is particularly intriguing, let's say, to viewers of a certain age, is that apparently it is possible to, in the words of Nike, just do it. Like there is a mentality.
Yeah, where you're like, I'm going to
towards
take
life.
3 children under 9 and get on a 15-hour flight.
I mean, she does that constantly. But beyond that, like you could just live on Hawaii near the water, and that could be how you think about your life. But then you could change your mind and then live in one of the most beautiful parts of Italy that I've ever seen captured on film and adjust, you know, and then go from wearing like super sick Guyabera shirts to like really, really nice looking flannels, you know, like, and that could just be who you are now. And you could cook your food and you could go with your friends on trips and you could live more spontaneously. I find that very appealing at times and completely outside of my lived experience. One of the things that the show I think does really well, particularly in the 3rd season, is not shy away from the fact that there may be some attendant cost to that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's built into their story in a way that is subtle at first. And it's talked about in the 1st season that when Garrett and Nicole met, they were married to other people. Now, Nicole had been married for, I think, like 8 days. And there's an age difference. And they were just like, nope, we are in love and we complete each other. And that's clearly true. They are deeply devoted to each other and to this version of the family that makes sense for them and for his lifestyle, which is slavishly devoted to chasing greatness and intensity. The downside to that comes out in drips and drabs. Like there'll be a reference to a time when Garrett got really hurt. And we saw that, I think, in the 1st season when he gets really jacked up at Mavericks. This season, I feel like, maybe I'm wrong because I haven't rewatched the 1st season, may have been the first time that when referring to that, they talk about the deep depression he was in and how he was drinking every day.
I don't remember the drinking part.
That's just like a reference to that. There's also like there's a phenomenal detour in the final episode of the season when Garrett takes a 2-day trip away from this home in Italy, leaving Nicole with the screaming kids
for a week
to go surf in Morocco. And he brings, who does he bring? His firstborn son, who's a 30-year-old kid named Titus.
Yeah.
And it's quite moving when he's like, this is the best trip of my life. I got to share something with my dad. But the show is also like, I didn't really see my dad for a while.
Yeah.
That contrasted with Justine's decisions and what it means to her. Justine is like incredible big wave surfer, French woman who has a loving partner named Fred.
Who's just like, I'm down for Justine no matter what.
Whatever happens, I will go there with Justine. And they're like, and then by season's end, they've welcomed a baby, and she says quite clearly, like, Kai Lenny can surf waves forever and then go home to his family.
Yeah.
I have birthed this child, so I'm out of the water right now.
Yeah.
That's a different choice, or Kadi's choices, or Chumbo's choices. And I think they're looking at Garrett as an inspiration, but increasingly as a little bit like a chill out dude.
I think it's an amazing portrait of people who are so great at something they're addicted to it. Or maybe they're great at it because they are addicted to it. So one of the ways that they set up Garrett and Nicole's move to this town in northern Italy is Nicole is very insistent that they are going to be getting off their devices, no more iPads, no more smartphones, like really getting back in touch, being present is like a huge mantra, and like Garrett's always talking in these like kind of new agey, like, I'm just going to feel this and I'm going to be there.
Heal my body.
Yeah, I'm going to heal and I'm going to be present. I'm going to be the person that, I need to be. And then like, obviously in TV time, I don't know like how it felt like in real time. Garrett's like on his phone looking at swells real quick. And when Garrett's gone, there's a really amazing moment where Nicole's got like 3 screaming children and she's like, I don't know what you want. Do you want to watch Cocomelon?
She says Cocomelon. Yeah, I don't know if you caught that.
Nicole is like, everybody is like corrupted by like the convenience of technology.
Do you think she should have grabbed baby Faye by the back of the skull?
Oh, man. I would love to babysit for the McNamara's. Me and Beryl would have a lot to talk about. We both love football. We love soccer.
At the Thanksgiving episode where they ask they're asking everyone, like, what are you thankful for? By the way, beautiful Thanksgiving spread that they rustled up in the farmlands, like the beating heart of Italy's foodways. They asked Beryl what he's thankful for, and he just goes, soccer. It's like,
me too.
Like moron. Like, I feel like that's you at the table as well.
I'm going to need you to get familiar with Florian Wirtz, by the way.
Yeah, I heard that's why they traded Rafael Devers.
That's Bill's conspiracy, but it's not the case. Liverpool is just a class organization, and that's where everybody wants to come.
Because they're the champions of England?
Yeah.
The FA Cup?
Yep. No, just the Premier League, not the FA Cup.
They didn't win the FA Cup.
No,
they haven't won the treble?
They did not win the treble.
I'm really swimming without a net here.
On the flip side of the Garrett portrait of this guy who's like, no matter where I am, no matter how present I am with my family, I'm looking at swells. Kadi goes to the most idyllic spot in the world for Christmas in the Swiss Alps, the Swiss-French Alps.
We should say, Kadi has our heart.
Yeah.
He is the sweetest
guy.
But
Kadi is snowboarding with his perfect girlfriend who's like, I'm just really supportive of Kadi.
Like us.
And on Christmas night is like, there's crazy swells at Mavericks. I gotta bounce.
And no, but not only does he say I have to bounce, he then makes it like an 8-hour, like, I don't know, what should I do? And she's just like,
look,
literally decide.
I've been there. I don't really want to play golf.
Ugh, the guys keep texting me.
But I guess I bought these clubs.
Guess I bought these clubs.
Fantastic series. I don't know if it's coming back.
Well, so it hasn't been announced. I did see. I mean, the thing about the series is like it ends, and then I immediately like rush to the internet,
social media to see their stuff,
see where they are now or what's going on. And when Nicole is posting, can you name by heart Nicole, our queen's Instagram account?
No.
At Mama Unearthed. She's the best. She has this really beautiful Instagram video where she's like, I don't know where else to put this, but like, does it really piss anyone else off that they only sell synthetic swimwear? So we are polluting the ocean with these like artificially made.
Do you buy that?
I swim nude. I just wanted to make Kyle laugh. I don't swim.
She's been chuckling. She's been enjoying this.
In one of those, she was like, she posted the finale. And Kadi's like in the comments being like, hope it's not the end. Like they want to keep.
I think there was a weird feeling where it was like, oh, this was announced as 6 episodes, aired as 5.
They clearly have tons of footage. Ends
on a note that's like, this is the end of the run for these characters. But Chris Smith in that same interview that I was reading was like, I'd love to make more. He's like, there's so many stories to tell.
And such a big world.
Every time I'm like, God, I mean, like, is there any more waves to ride? There are.
And then they go to Morocco and there's Raymond and his son. And
Morocco shit is so cool. Imagine driving to Morocco to go surfing.
That really feels like some William Finnegan shit, right? Like that's some 70s. Did you feel, well, I have 2 questions for you before we wrap up. What is your ultimately, like I was texting, you watched it before I did, so I was catching up. It's just what you do.
It's just
but you know what? The swells at Waimea were beautiful, so I got distracted.
The morels at Dave's.
They really leave you. They don't leave. Well, they leave you quickly, and then they leave a. I mean, I was texting you like Garrett is a monster.
Yeah.
And it is intense the way he is just like like he is a complicated person, and this is a reality show. But there is something about his spirit. Like when people talk about like someone like Garrett or surfers, they're like childlike wonder, like willing to jump into anything and give it a shot, and that can be infectious. There's also the flip side of that, which is he behaves like a child. He doesn't get towed correctly to the wave that he wants, and he curses out his best friend and like disciple basically in Cody, and it's like, forget it, I'm not surfing again.
Yeah. He was like, nope, that was the best wave of the day. That was the wave of the day.
You missed it.
And it's like, well, literally, we don't know that.
And you're thinking also about the first episode where it's just like, he's been concussed many times.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on.
I'm not
there.
a neurologist, so I'm not going to comment on like whether he has CT. But
Dr. House, how would you treat it?
My relationship to Garrett as a character, because I think obviously you have to almost treat him as that and not the real person, is not unlike the relationship you might have to, say, Jordan in The Last Dance, Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, where when you're going through it, the first few episodes, you're like, this guy is a badass.
Yeah.
This guy knows how to take it on. And then when you kind of think back, you're like, it's kind of fucked up that you like spent 10 years like getting Isaiah Thomas all the way out of the Olympic paint because of this, or it's like you basically like aren't really fit for anything but the thing you're great at. Yeah. And now I that's as a character. As a person, I'm sure Garrett has his good days and bad days just like everybody else does.
That's beautifully said. Before we wrap it up, do you have a top 3 surfers from this world?
My number one guy is Chumbo.
Chumbo's a beautiful man.
But that's kind of like being like my favorite basketball player is Steph Curry. Like I think it's like easy because he's obviously incredible.
Yeah. But what about the one where his dad comes and surfs with him?
That was pretty sick, dude.
That was so
when they
wild.
were just like hugging and he was just like, we will always have this day. I was like, fuck.
I know. I was thinking about the time I was like,
is this Field of Dreams? Like, what the
I was like, my equivalent is the time I played my dad Pulp's Different Class, and he was like, well, some trenchant social commentary. I was like, that's the closest we ever were. And this dude's 55-year-old barrel-chested dude like just flies to Portugal to hug his son, tell him he loves him, and surf big waves with him.
I think mine was my dad getting me into the screening of Pulp Fiction and just letting me like go, say what again, motherfucker, the whole way on the way home.
That's better than mine.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chumbo's your number one?
Yeah, I think so.
I would say Justine, Chumbo. But my number one now, I don't even know his name, but my number one now is the lifeguard who won the Eddie.
Oh, that guy was fucking insane. That was nuts. He was just like, I guess I'll enter.
In episode 4, there's a guy who just like lives in Hawaii, has a family, works as a lifeguard.
Wins the tournament as a 16 seed.
On the beach. And they're like, you can surf this year, but also when you're not surfing, you have to work as a lifeguard. And he's like, I guess I'll skip my lunch break. And then he just low-key wins the tournament. While wearing his lifeguard shirt. As a lifeguard, I feel like that was great vision.
You know what? But the other surfers were really happy for him. That was cool.
Surfers are not famously like dickheads.
Let's wrap it up here because we have Gail Simmons joining us. Join us next week. Some previews for next week.
What do you got?
Well, we're going to have to talk a little bit about the Bear coming back.
Bear's coming.
And then the Bear will be back. So Andy and I will do our usual 3 episodes at a time Bear run next Thursday. We'll do the first 3.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
That was the
breaking news.
I sent to you. Yeah.
You know, I did see it in my inbox, but I had a lot of...
Everybody have a great weekend, including Gail Simmons.
Montana Health Services. Yeah, let's get into my interview with Gail Simmons.
Thanks to Kaya and John.
I am so thrilled to be joined yet again by a star, judge, executive producer of Top Chef, which just wrapped its 22nd season on Bravo, filming in her native Canada. Gail Simmons, welcome back to The Watch.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, as always. I feel like this is our ritual right after the finale.
We are so honored, or in this case, I am so honored, because as I said, Chris packed his knives, he went, but this is like, the exit interview after the championship season. Like we can really...
It is the exit interview.
Okay, so I want to begin this season in a this season's conversation in a very predictable place. I want to talk about the winner. I want to talk to you about Tristan Epsilon, his emergence at around the mid-season point this year as just an absolute force was thrilling for viewers, I think. I'm wondering when did you at judges' table realize that he might be, as the kids say, him?
You know, there's kind of 2 parts to that answer, because I always say, and it remains true even in some ways, especially this season, that I can tell you in the first, let's say, 3 episodes who the best cooks are.
Right.
And he was definitely among them. That said, I could never, nor would I ever, because I do think it's hubris, tell you who I think is going to win. Because even though I am part of that decision-making process, that has nothing, being the best cook has nothing to do with the outcome. Not nothing, obviously, but just because you're the best cook, that's not the only factor that gets you to the finish line. And so I definitely realized what a strong cook he was. Even in episode 3 specifically, I remember, if it's episode 3, episode 3, 4, the episode that we did at Casa Loma, where we did the kind of like reverse dessert challenge, deconstructing desserts and making them into savory dishes, which I contested.
Episode 4. Yep.
Thank you. You should be the executive producer. And that was when I really understood that his flavors were sort of ran so much deeper. Mm-hmm. But that said, were so many strong players this season. And I think overall as a cast, it was our strongest cast ever.
Really?
With the exception possibly of like World All-Stars or All-Stars. Because I kind of think of those seasons as a little bit different than, what we call regular seasons.
Right.
But I think of any regular season on record, I think overall, like as a whole, it was the strongest cast we've ever had. So, in episode 4, I was still gunning for people who didn't even make it past episode 4, 5, 6. They were gone before Restaurant Wars, and they were people that I put in the same category as Tristan. So, I never want to say that I knew all along. That's just not how the game is played. You know what I mean?
Totally. But there is, especially in the wake of Buddha's run, I think there was more of an understanding, even on the longtime fans' part, of how there is in one bucket exceptional cooking skill and ability, and that there is another bucket of gamesmanship and improvisation and looseness and being able to go with the flow and being able to internalize challenges. And so I wonder if that's a similar slow developing realization for you as well, that these are separate buckets, but the greatest can have both.
Well, there's the Venn diagram, right? Of being a great cook. There's many ways that people are great cooks. And Tom and I talk about this a lot, because you can be an exceptional cook and a massive success as a chef in the world, but be the type of cook who does not work spontaneously and does not just think on the fly, try out a recipe once and put it on a menu. Some of the greatest cooks of our time are the ones who work on every menu item for weeks before you see them. And if that's the type of cook you are, Top Chef might not be for you. And you don't really know that often until you get on Top Chef and realize that that's the kind of cook you are. And so, in any given season, there's, I would say, 50 and 50 chefs who are really great at that and chefs who aren't. This season, though, there was some magic. Like there was some fairy dust, even with the chefs who didn't make it that long, because that's not necessarily how they cook. I'm thinking about chefs like Tatiana and Zubair and Kat, off the top of my head, but really they were all pretty solid from the start. And they went pretty early in the game, at least earlier than I thought they would go, just because I could tell that they were all really excellent cooks. But then there was the gamesmanship, and then there's other factors like you have a bad day. Amazingly for Tristan, he had a lot of bad days. Yeah. But he had a focus and a clarity. I don't want to say despite the bad days, because I think partially it was because of them that just willed him forward.
It's interesting that you talk about the ability to improvise, because specifically in that 4th episode, the dessert challenge. So he comes up with something that's like figgy duff, but it's pepper. I'm reading it here. I don't remember it.
Yeah. You have all the notes. I need all the notes now.
It's pepper pot with braised lamb fat madeleine, and pickled grapes. I think that was the first of his winning streak, when the other chefs are like, if he says he's never done this before or doesn't like these ingredients, we're cooked.
That's right.
How much, no pun intended, how much how does that translate to you at Judge's table? Like when you're sitting there, you haven't been watching the cut, obviously. You have not been in the kitchen. So you don't know about his relationship to these ingredients or this challenge. Is there something ineffable that you can taste or that you begin to notice in his cooking that suggests that he is vibrating on that plane?
Well, yes, only in that when you have no context and you eat a great dish, when you sit down at a restaurant and you see something on a menu and then you taste it and you know in an instant that it accomplished what it set out to accomplish really beautifully. It said what it was, it had an intention, and it delivered on all of those things. And that dish was the perfect example. I mean, the lamb fat madeleine, the pastry chefs at the table with us were just blown away by it. The pickled grapes, which brought out the acidity and complemented the lamb, like it all just made so much sense that it really felt like a dish that he had been making in some iteration for a long time. But that's going back to your previous question, what makes certain chefs really stand out in this particular competition, because he has that ability to sort of, it's almost like a photographic memory in a way. And I think Buddha has a little of this too, where you can foresee and imagine the dish. I mean, every chef needs to be able to understand, to put flavors together, but he can almost like formulate them and understand exactly where they need to be and then work backwards from there. And I think that's a gift. Honestly, he did that really well.
That what you're speaking to there, actually, I think is something that is is consistent through the greatest moments in the show's history. I was thinking about the foraging episode this season, which I think is an all-timer for me, and the ability of these remaining contestants to sort of spiritually understand the assignment and to also end up there. Because if you even just follow someone like Schwei throughout the course of that episode, what he's describing is beautiful, but it's a description. It seemed like he was then able to use his practical skills to give you that image, to give you that vision, to give you that piece. And that translates to TV, even though we never tasted the dish.
Well, the amazing thing, and this works for cooking in every sense, and we talk about it ad nauseum at the table, is there's concept and there's execution, right? And both things have to work for a dish to come together, because you can have a great concept, obviously, and mess up the cook. And no matter how many great ideas you put into that dish, it's not going to work because I'm not going to want to eat it. It won't be delicious. It won't be properly done from a technical standpoint. And the same thing is true. You can have a mediocre concept. You can cook all the pieces well. But if they as a whole aren't conceptualized, aren't realized, then it won't work either. And I think that's the thing about this season that I'm going to harp on, is that it wasn't just Tristan, right?
Right.
Schwei, Cesar, Bailey. I mean, Bailey had a massive transformation, but all four of them, and then some. I mean, there were high moments for almost every single one of our chefs. Again, Katiana, Zubair, Lana, Massimo, where like moments where they brought us dishes where even Tom, especially Tom, who is not one to pass out compliments, was dumbstruck by the level that they were operating on for both parts of their dish, right? From conception all the way through. So they had intention and they really brought it to life. And the foraging challenge was incredibly emotional for that reason.
It was, I mean, it reminded me of like the I think it was the first All-Stars season when they had to cook the meal of their history, and met with family members. This is years ago now. But I always hold that up as a benchmark of like, this is amazing, everything that the show can do wound together, execution, story. Speaking of story, so TV is obviously in the narrative business, and your colleagues, producers, Magical Elves, like everybody does a beautiful job with this in post and bringing the stories to the fore. Underreported or under-discussed sometimes is the fact that I think restaurant meals are also very narrative dependent. Like you see the website, you hear the story of the chef, the server might say, let me tell you a little bit about this fish or whatever. And that influences how you feel about things. Right. Tristan is an amazing, in addition to other things, an amazing teller of his own story in the sense that he's explaining in his on-camera interviews, his intentions, about Black foodways and with a
Yes.
global perspective and finding his story within the larger narratives of the season. All of that said, you are just showing up at the table in different locations day after day. So how does Tristan's story and his goals make it to you? How do you perceive of them over the course of a season?
We know a lot less than you do.
Right.
So you watch every dish come to the table, having seen all the parts come together, right? You're absolutely right. I show up with very little context. I mean, context piles on episode to episode. We learn a little more about them, but we only learn about them at the table with their dish and the 2-minute description or less. I'm going to go back to the description in a second that they give us when they present their dish. And then at judges table, but only at judges table if they are top 3 or bottom 3. There is a whole middle ground, which really takes up the first half of the season of people who never get another chance to verbally explain their dish and defend it, debate it, express it, right? And that actually we have worked on solving as an issue for years. And we've made some changes to the show because of that, because only a really small handful of people get to talk more about their dish and kind of defend it and give us a fuller picture, because that is all we get. But that doesn't mean we don't get the story. The one thing we do get that you don't see is that when they come to the table to present their dish to us, because they're all storytellers and because they're on camera, when Kristen says, Tristan, tell us what you've made for us today, they often give a very long description, a minute or so talking about their inspiration. And we don't let them go on forever, but they give a longer description than what you see, because almost every time Kristen has to then say, okay, give me the menu version, which is lamb, Madeline, grapes. Right. So you end up seeing just those 3 words, and then you get the backstory through the cutaways and interviews. But we do get a little more at the table.
I think the producers also give us a sense of what you're experiencing, because inevitably when someone starts talking about their dish, there's a quick cut to Tom ignoring them and just putting peas on his fork or something.
He's very good at that. Yeah.
That's communicating something as well.
The truth is that the dish has to speak for itself too, to some degree. And I think we as eaters at the table are smart enough most of the time to get the connections. We know what the challenge is, right? We're very clear on what the challenge is, what they were given. We get a long list of their rules, their restrictions, what the challenge is made up of. And then we eat the dish with only that context. And I think because it's across the board for everyone, there's no one who gets more time to tell their story than anyone else in terms of when it's presented. I think we do get enough of a sense. And also, just like I don't want to be swayed by their individual personalities, which is why we keep such a distance from them, I also don't want to be swayed by their storytelling, because some, and this happens every season, some contestants are such good storytellers that you can mistake that for being a good cook.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a case of the tail wagging the dog. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
There are definitely times when I get completely swayed by the storyteller, and it isn't necessarily what's on the plate.
I've had that experience at restaurants.
We all have, right? I mean, the classic, I'm not saying he was not a good cook, because he was an amazing cook, but the first time I really understood that to be true was with Kevin Gillespie. Kevin, who was, an all-star and an extraordinary cook, and remains an extraordinary cook, is a master storyteller. And he truly I could listen to him talk all day. And sometimes I forgot that it was actually about eating the food. And that's what I had to judge on, not on the beautiful history of his ancestors and his heritage. You know what I mean?
Speaking of extracurricular things, there was an interesting quote that you gave to the Hollywood Reporter when you and Tom and Kristen did a mid-season interview. And you talked about something that I had completely not even noticed, which is that since the pandemic season, the contestants don't even live together anymore. That reality show trapping was done away with. That said, there were 2 kind of things that emerged to me this season as a little bit of not a return to, in a trashy way, reality roots. but I noticed them as being extracurricular from the food and the table. One, more somberly, was Tristan losing his father during the Restaurant Wars cook. The second one, again, not comparing these two, this is a lot lighter, was that there were times when Massimo was receiving the villain edit. And the show seemed to be leaning into that a little bit. And then when he's dismissed and Kristen is crying, I'm like, oh, actually, everybody cares about each other enough. Just curious your take on that.
We certainly cared about him.
Yes.
I can't speak for all the contestants, I can speak for us.
Tristan was a little spicy at times, or at least the cherry pick quotes were. Broadly speaking, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that extracurricular content, on the stories that emerge that are not necessarily relevant to what's on your plate at judges' table.
I think it is the absolute challenge and the crux of our producers and our editors' jobs to walk that very, very fine line between it not being over dramatic and not being, just another reality show about people having issues with each other and cat fighting. That is not at all. We did away with that a long time ago.
Yep.
We realized a long time ago that our show is about the food and the kitchen, which is why, we had that trapping of everyone living in a house because that's how it always was. But when the pandemic changed that and didn't allow us to have them live together, it made so much more sense. And we realized the show is just as good, if not better.
Yeah. And
so we never went back. Along with a lot of other things. I mean, there's almost no house reality on our show at all anymore. It got less and less, there was a lot of it in the first, let's say 3, 4, 5 seasons. And then we all just realized it also wasn't adding to what our viewers really cared about. So that went away. But we also have to remember, number one, as much as they're living in a bubble, so to speak, when they're on the show, they are not monoliths. I mean, they are humans that have a lot going on in their lives. And it's also a television show, right? It has to be interesting. It has to be entertainment. First and foremost, it is about keeping you wanting to watch and be amused and entertained. So we don't want it to feel exaggerated and hokey, but we also have to give you people who are interesting. And remember that they have things going on in their lives. And some of those things have to permeate that bubble. Things like Sarah Bradley at the end of the All-Star season, it really coming to light through the season in general, but really at the end, everyone realizing that she in many ways has worked double as hard as every other person in that cast because she was simultaneously breastfeeding and shipping milk back to her newborn child. So she was triply exerting calories. She was spending hours, being a mom when the cameras were turned off and sometimes when the cameras were turned on. And that was worth making sure everyone knew because it really was an added level to her experience that plays into how she cooked, what she was fighting for. I don't even know how she was standing by the end. That's a whole other thing. Extraordinary. And Tristan, the same rules applied to some degree. There are things that enter our little world that you can't pretend aren't happening. It's not fair to the chef. It's not fair to the other chefs around them either. And we also had to give him the opportunity to leave because that was absolutely on the table. It was his choice to stay. But if he were to have left at Restaurant Wars, we had to also explain that in the real show.
Right.
So it had to become part of the conversation, but we didn't learn about it until he was finished cooking, I think.
The finale itself was beautifully shot, and it was my favorite type of finale in that nobody screwed up. At that point, I mean, that's my relationship with the show. I want everybody to do their best, and I also want the best person to win. But in this case, I feel like that was the case. Was this to a degree, and this might be more your executive producer hat than your judge hat, but it seemed like fait accompli. Once the dishes started coming down, the perception was Tristan won just by a very wide margin, which isn't to say that the other contestants failed. It's just that his meal was clearly better, and the sort of the dangling, what fish will he use, was just sort of an attempt to give him some wobbles, some Achilles heel, because it did seem like a freight train at that point.
Right. I would say it was a freight train. That's interesting. It's hard for me to watch it.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to differentiate the final cut from my experience.
Sure.
The live experience. I think it was his to lose, for sure.
Oh, and to be clear, I don't mean that like you sat down being like, it's Tristan is the clubhouse favorite. It's just more that like the meals were, it seemed to be a clear separation.
Yes.
Like the worst, what was the worst thing said? Richard was like, this is interesting. I'm not sure if it's delicious. And like, you're so good on TV, Richard.
He really is.
He's great.
He's a joy. I guess we all go in with an open mind. And I will say this, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud before. I'm often disappointed in finales a little bit. Personally, that doesn't mean I'm not judging it for what it is, for the dishes in front of us, comparing them to each other as I do every challenge and being as honest and fair and objective as I can be. But I often feel like the pressure of a finale, whether it's my perception because I have that pressure, or if it's actually the pressure on the chefs, I always feel like it makes it all sometimes a little bit anticlimactic. Like I want everything to be better than it is because I have such high expectations. And that includes our All-Star finale, by the way.
Right.
Our World All-Stars 2 seasons ago, the 3 of them, I just had such high expectations and they gave great meals, but there were some really big mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And that was, disappointing because we're like mama bears and we just want them all to be perfect. It's
also just that the rhythm of like, oh my God, I'm flying here. I'm in the zone. I'm like a basketball player, who needs a heat check, adapting to the craziness week after week. And then suddenly you hit the brick wall of do whatever you want and do it the best you've ever done.
Absolutely.
That's a trip.
It is a trip and it is a mind game on top of many mind games. But they do have time to prepare for this one, right? Generally we send them home for a few weeks to reset and rest, and then they can plan and they can practice and they can have everything they need in a list and ready, so that final meal, there are definitely factors. The ingredients that they have access to might not be identical. They don't necessarily know who their sous chef is going to be, etc. This finale really didn't feel that way, is my point. It really felt like they were all firing on all cylinders and they all gave us the meals that they wanted to give us, I think, with small exception. But yeah, Tristan, he came with a plan. He executed that plan. And I don't think he really made any errors. And I saw him this weekend. We were at the James Beard Awards together. We presented some awards together. And it was the first time I'd seen him since Milan. I don't have any contact with any of them until the whole thing's over. And I told him that it's probably the first finale in recent memory, that I haven't been yelled at by fans. Like for some reason or another. It's the first time that it seems unanimously everyone got it, whether that was who they wanted to win or not. Everyone got it and everyone was happy.
I think probably the last one was when Melissa won. That it was just our perception of the excellence was just undeniable.
Yes.
One more question about this particular finale before turning to the show at large. I had an interesting experience just going back through the list of winners recently, now 22 of them, and realizing really just in a right in front of me kind of way how varied the definition of success is in this particular industry, not just for Top Chefs, but for chefs. And I wondered if you had any thoughts, without making predictions about, of course, one person's life and direction. I came away from the season feeling like Tristan seemed uniquely equipped to succeed on his own terms, mainly because he has such a clearly delineated vision for the food that he cooks and for food in general, kind of straddling the line between what he's putting on the plate for diners, but also what he's putting out into the world in terms of what he values. Because when you look back, there's a really interesting mix of people who are like, I'm just going to go back to Philadelphia and open a restaurant, versus people who have struggled, I think, with fame and celebrity and maybe not wanting to be in a historically punishing industry. We mentioned Melissa, who just from, again, I've never tasted her food, but my perception is that she's one of the most gifted cooks in America. And right now I'm seeing her, she's traveling the world on Instagram and she's doing her in a way, which is not a traditional chef path.
Yes. But she wasn't at a restaurant when she won
That's
either.
Right.
She hasn't changed her path necessarily.
Oh, yes. I don't mean she deviated. It's just
yes, exactly.
How do you share that with the world?
Right. And I think that the definition of chef has changed in 20 years too,
totally.
Right? The definition of chef and more importantly, the definition of good food and of fine dining has changed so much. We can eat well. We have such a different perception of what good food is than we did 20 years ago, which feels like 3 minutes ago in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that has dictated some of that change. It used to be that you went back and you did what a chef does, which is put your head back down and you keep cooking. Also remember that in the earlier years, the chefs were of more varying experience.
Mm-hmm.
The first really 6 seasons until Las Vegas, until season 6, and even through season 6, maybe even to season 8, which was our first all-star season, the chefs were still line cooks to sous chefs,
right?
Let's say. But now, because we've been able to raise the bar every season after season, and our expectations have gotten higher, and we've been able to do things like World All-Stars, almost every chef who's on the show is a chef who is an executive chef or already owns their own restaurant or has worked for a decade or more under some of the best chefs in the world, Tristan being one of them. So I just think they are all in a better place, a more realized place coming to the show. They've also, and this can't be understated, they have also had 20 years to watch the show.
Totally.
And that's made a huge difference, especially in the case of someone like Buddha, who came on the show. And I mean, besides our showrunner, Donnie, I think is like the most well-versed in Top Chef of anyone on the planet. Like he's memorized every episode, every dish. It's wild. And I'm here for it. It's how he got to where he was, right? So I do think Tristan is poised for success in a lot of ways. But I also think, it's because of all those factors, but I don't know if it's that different than, let's say, the last 5 seasons as well.
Okay.
It's just about how you choose to show up afterwards. Right. His path was very clear. And there certainly have been other chefs who've come to the show and only on the show. I'm thinking not necessarily winners, but people like Shirley and Nina and Gregory, who've come to the show cooking one way and leaving cooking another and executing on that new way. And that really, embracing their heritage, embracing that part of themselves. He's already there.
But the Gregory has a brilliant hit restaurant that came out of Restaurant Wars. I feel like it's almost underreported that
he was cooking Southeast Asian food until then.
That's wild.
Exceptionally well.
Of course, but still.
I do think that Tristan would agree with this statement, and I hope I'm not speaking on his behalf. But just like so many chefs, and I think this is just how our industry works, is that the reason he's able to be so fully realized in his vision in the place where he is in this moment is because of chefs like Gregory,
right?
And Marcus, who he worked for, Marcus Samuelson, for so long, and seeing representation, which goes back to how we have all, thank goodness, developed such a different understanding of what good food is, where good food comes from, and the definition of fine dining and food experience.
It's interesting to frame it that way, thinking about the not just the industry, but the show as a continuum of people on each other's shoulders. Because when Chris and I were talking about the finale, I was thinking about Eric Ajapong, who brought African ingredients to Top Chef that I was unfamiliar with, and maybe some of the judging panel was unfamiliar with. And he, in a way, he walked so Tristan can run, because there was a familiarization both on the audience and potentially some of the judging, not necessarily you even, but the other guest judges.
Absolutely, absolutely me. Oh, I would agree. I mean, I've been schooled by all of these chefs, going back for years. And that's part of my job. People are like, how can you be an expert no one can be an expert on every single thing in food. That is literally the reason I love my job so much, right? Because every single dish I eat is different. There's always more ingredients. There's always more to learn. And I think I still have a fair and objective way to judge. But if I wasn't learning, then we wouldn't be getting anywhere.
So before we run out of time here, I let me be the judge for a moment, if you don't mind.
Please.
And I want to be honest with you, and I want to talk to you about it. So, Mike, you know from talking to me year after year, I love the show, and I've never missed an episode. My relationship with the show changed slightly this year. I was not on board fully after 3-4 episodes, and I checked out. And I walked away and only came back at the end and experienced it in a very surprising way, where I basically binged the last 8. And I, A, wanted to come clean with you. But B, wanted to talk to you about always, but also wanted to talk to you about some of the things that were giving me some concerning vibes. And I think you've spoken about these before. Again, in that Hollywood Reporter piece, you did speak about this. And so I'm curious to hear you say it again. Basically, in the beginning, I felt that the show seemed overly claustrophobic and studio bound. Now, I think in that Hollywood Reporter piece, you said if you go by the numbers, we were in and out as much as normal.
We are.
But there was a, at least in my perception of it, it felt very studio bound and also almost anonymously studio bound. In that, and I know that this is a personal point for you, that the show's mission of communicating its location felt very muted for the first few episodes. I was not clear what was special about where you were, what it meant for the chefs, who was coming in to talk about it, and these traditions. In many ways, it wasn't until Calgary when the show burst into widescreen and I understood a place. So I wonder how you feel about the opening third of the season and if any of these criticisms ring true or were being examined internally.
They do to some degree. There's my initial 2 thoughts about it are, number 1, Toronto is a massive cosmopolitan city that is in many ways not very different than any major American city.
And it's filmed that way often as well. It stands in for so many other places.
Stands in for everything, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that played a part in the fact that people kept asking me, almost to the point of me feeling defensive. And I wrote an essay about it. What's Canadian food, right? And they weren't getting the answer from me that they wanted, or they weren't getting the answer from the show that they were looking for.
Yes.
And I would argue that that's like saying, what's American food? I want you to show me America in 4 episodes or less, people. And number 1, you cannot do that because America is a massive country. Canada is much, much bigger in terms of land mass, in terms of east to west, north to south. And so there was no way we were all going to show you everything about this place. Nor we weren't even going to try. It's also 100 years younger than America, which is already a pretty young city when you compare it to a place like Milan or Bangkok and almost any city in the rest of the world besides North America, which is thousands. Well, I mean, I would argue there is thousands of years of history here. It's not ours.
Right.
So I think because Canada is a young country and it's mostly an immigrant country, we did the best we could to really show you as broadly as we could, but we also didn't want to make it a cliche. So how do you show all of those sort of tropes because everyone expects them and because they are a cliche for a reason, but without making it feel like we are throwing Canada as an entire country in your face? It's kind of not possible. But I also wonder, I wonder if there was an expectation on, because it was called Destination Canada, it wasn't Toronto. We had this massive MO to somehow show you the whole country in 15 episodes. And I think that was a real challenge.
Yeah, I think Destination Canada suggests that, we're going to be in Montreal and we're going to see the Joe Beef guys and that whole tradition. And then we're going to be in Vancouver.
Well, you did see the Joe Beef guys, but for one episode, you saw Fred.
We saw one guy.
Yeah, we saw one, but how could we make a whole episode? We can't make a whole season with Fred as much as I'd love to.
Totally.
And again, like you're right, there are so many factors. Going back into the studio question, there's so many factors. about getting out on location, and we always do at least 2 elimination challenges in our own studio, because we build this gorgeous, massive studio, and we need to make it financially viable. So we do our quick fires there and our cooks there, of course, but then we have to do a certain number of elimination challenges there, because we have literally built it from scratch, and it is beautiful. I thought it was the most beautiful set we'd actually ever built. But I do think, there's also so many factors, like the Canadian tourism obviously had a lot to do with bringing us there and being part of the season. And every province, there's 10 provinces and 3 territories, and not all of them were part of the decision to be part of the show.
Right.
So, there were varying degrees of who got to have as much airtime, and that's politics, and that's kind of how it had to work. So,
are you saying there's a province who has a history of separatism? Because even as an American, I think I've heard rumors of that.
Yeah, exactly. But Quebec, Montreal we did do an episode about Montreal, we just didn't have the funds to move 150 people across the entire country, right? We could only move once.
I wondered about that because, this is not a Top Chef specific question. The industry in general is going through a period of contraction. Budgets are being investigated everywhere, and so I wondered then if one of the lessons from the season might be, for as counterintuitive as it was when I think you even told us, like, we're going to Wisconsin or we're going to a place you don't expect, a smaller, specific place might make more sense for communicating something,
right. And
as well as with the budgetary,
a deeper dive into
the budgetary
culture.
reality. Yeah,
right. All of those things, I think you're absolutely right about. I do, because moving our company, again, 150 people across the country is a massive undertaking. From a cost perspective, from a logistics perspective, from a time perspective. Remember that our contestants are sequestered.
Yep.
So it's not like we can say, okay, go home for 2 weeks while we rebuild another set on the other side of the country. And we're going to do this 6 times so that we can cover every major city in across a massive country. Like, it's just not physically possible. Again, we built this studio in Toronto. We weren't going to build another studio somewhere else for a second or third or fourth location. When we got to Calgary, part of the reason, and this happens whenever we move to another place before the finale, but also in the finale, there is no studio, which is why you also see more on location, because we can't build a second full studio in our second location. So
one of the things that I do love about the show and respect very much is how responsive the show is to the climate, to previous seasons, to itself. We've talked in past years about, the role that I think that you played and Padma played becoming producers in that. So if you can, without breaking any confidences, what are the lessons learned from this season that you are interested in poking at or shifting for a future season? Tom mentioned the mise en place challenge. I would like to just second that. I think that would be incredible.
Oh yeah, doing it the first episode,
and then everyone has their stocks and stuff, and then they get rated.
Exactly.
That's a good idea, Tom.
It would be incredible. It's a great idea. It's not, from a time constraint perspective, it's not an easy one to execute. So we'll see if it happens. I know why he wants to do it, but letting people, you can't give 7 people 17 hours to, make stocks.
To braise.
And it's also really boring to watch.
What did he say? He said, I want to see them preserve lemons.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Tom's there to be the chef, not to be the television producer.
Exactly. Delicious. But really, So there's that. It has to work in the context of what we're doing here, right? So making an overnight stock and clarifying that stock, not riveting television. However, other things I think you did hit on, sort of narrowing our scope a little bit. I think our casting department made a huge effort between season 21 and season 22. I love both casts dearly, but as I said, I think on the whole, this cast was, and it was no coincidence that this cast was so talented across the board. And I think that has to remain. So that is also a huge challenge to hone in on what worked and what didn't, and to re-up the stakes, which is going to be hard again. Yep. And I do think that making the scope of what we tackle and in the next location, making it really interesting, but going a little deeper is something I would like to do. For that reason alone, that Montreal is my favorite city in the world. I believe it is the best food city in the world.
It's up there. It's
and
an
I'm only
place.
a little bit biased. But, it's so hard to show everything in, 60 minutes. Or 75 minutes, I think we give it now. So, I think we'll be able to do that in a better way. But also, I think we did the best we could because that was the mandate. And I'm so proud to have been able to go to Canada and show people my homeland.
Yeah, and I think that's also interesting to the streak you guys have been on that I find so fascinating that in the more recent years of the show is, what you did during the pandemic is a miracle. The Global All-Stars was a triumph. Showing that you can go to a place like Wisconsin and make it viable was really fascinating. And then I think, to your point, the caliber that emerged of contestants was a really nice reminder that it's not like it's picked over. There are still people emerging. There's still talent.
It's endless.
And I would say that like one of the things I'd love the show to be able to consider in the future is this generation of chefs, like how they think about the profession and what challenges they've faced in these, truly, let's say momentous, or you could say horrific last half decade of upheaval.
What about the last 30 days?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, our industry continues to take enormous pummelings from every side. And I think those things do need to be addressed and will be addressed by us and reflected in our next season. We really do hope to be, I don't know what the word is, a lighthouse a bit to shed light on real industry challenges and issues and conversations that happen at the industry level, but that affect all of our consumers. Anyone who eats in a restaurant, whether you're picking up a cheeseburger or you're sitting for a 6-course meal, is affected by our food system and is affected by restaurants. And that is everything from like who washes your dishes, where they come from, where they were born, and to the supply chain. And I think those are the things that there is a kind of endless conversation that needs to be talked about. And I do hope we can continue doing that.
I very much hope that the show can do that. Finally, we always talk to you at this time of year when you know something that you can't tell us. You have been very good at hinting. I don't know if you're prepared. It's been remarkable.
I'm prepared because I have a very stringent contract.
Yes.
I'm prepared to be tortured and to remain silent. I will say that I don't even know. I usually try to give you just a little something, but that no way gives away where we're going next. I don't even know when they're going to tell everyone where we're going next.
If history is any guide, they will tell us 2 days after you tease us on the podcast. Like that's
correct.
It's
but
always
you know
been.
what? Because they told everyone about Canada so early last year. Last week, I actually emailed them and I was like, "Hey, are we announcing this week? Like, I just want to make sure I know where we stand." And they were like, "Nope, do not tell anyone. Nope."
Also, you were so visibly overjoyed last year that I guessed. I didn't guess on Mike, but it did seem clear.
I know you all knew. It's not Canada. I'm not as overjoyed. It is domestic.
Okay.
It is a piece of the country I'm actually quite unfamiliar with, but I know parts of the area, but there are others that I've actually never visited at all. And I think it will show us another layer of American culture and foodways that we've touched on the show briefly, but really never explored.
You're very good at this.
It's not Atlanta and it's not Philadelphia. That's what everybody wants to know.
That was excellent, but as a Philadelphian, that did sting a little bit. That felt personal.
It's not my fault.
No. Just let me know who to blame when we go off, Mike. Oh, and last thing, just to pass along, Kristen crushed it.
Didn't she?
She really did. She's really good at this.
She's a joy.
And
she makes my heart sing.
And the emotion that she brings to it. And also, finally, my dream came true this year with my daughters finally started watching with me. And they were like, she's iconic. Because that's all their slang, But
I do know. So I'm yet to get my daughter to watch with me, but she does love Kristen like as if she's anti-Kristen, and she is very attached. And that is actually the only motivating factor for my daughter to do anything that's related to Top Chef.
That's amazing.
She likes Tom too, but
I don't know, I feel like
I'm at least on the list.
I feel like our kids are around the same age, so I feel like there's something generationally that she's doing. So good job for preserving the future of the show.
I think yes. No, I really with my daughter think it's more just she wants to see me as me. And when I'm on the screen, she loves coming to the set. She loves craft services. She loves sitting at judges' table when they're doing lighting checks. But she's just, it doesn't feel like watching the show, which I also understand. But she does love hanging with Kristen.
With all the chaos,
loves hanging with Kristen.
With all the chaos and tumult in the world, the only fundamental thing that my children don't understand is why anyone would listen to my podcast. Like that is just they can't wrap their heads around that. So it's universal.
I feel it deeply. Yeah. I feel it deeply.
on that deep note, Gail, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me again about this. Congratulations on another season. And I'm very excited to see how you continue to evolve in season 23.
Thank you. We will be in touch after the announcement because I'm curious for your thoughts.
I cannot wait. Take care. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much, as always.